Hello, Guelph. My name is Mark Peralvis, and that rhymes with for all of us, just in case you need to say my name. I'm the nominee to be a candidate for the People's Party for the Guelph riding, and I'm also the president of the EDA, so I'll be doing videos like this to help you understand the electoral issues and what the People's Party platform is all about. So the People's Party has released 2 party planks, and I'll just be looking at equalization, fairness for all provinces in this one. You can check the link out in the description. So the link is here, and the title is Equalization, Fairness for All Provinces. Issue. When it was started in 1957, the Equalization program had a noble intention to ensure all Canadians have access to a similar level of service from their provincial government, regardless of whether they live in a rich or poor provinces. Equalization was seen as a way to unite the country. Unfortunately, that is not how it turned out. The program is unfair and inefficient, both for citizens of richer provinces that do not receive equalization payments like Alberta and Saskatchewan, whose economies are hurting because of the downturn in the oil sector, and for citizens of provinces that have been on the receiving end for decades, Manitoba, Quebec, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI, because it keeps these provinces in a state of dependency and underdevelopment. Equalization payments encourage recipient provinces to maintain large public sectors and keep taxes high and intervene more in their economies, which drive out investment and lower employment and productivity. They don't have the correct incentives to make their economies more competitive and develop their natural resources. Because more private sector growth will lead to smaller equalization payments, it's a poverty trap. I scroll down just a little bit. Fact. In 2019-2020, the Equalization program will transfer nearly $20 billion. Quebec will receive $13 billion, Manitoba $2.3 billion, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia $2 billion each, and Prince Edward Island $419 million. The governments of British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, and Labrador, and Ontario will not receive any payments. Under the current formula, the total amount of equalization payments increases steadily in accordance with nominal GDP, even when there is a reduction in wealth disparities among the provinces. The People's Party plan. Provinces should not be receiving equalization payments for decades, just like individuals should not be receiving welfare checks all their lives. It's time to stop rewarding provincial governments for not adopting better economic policies. The Constitution does not commit the federal government to spend $20 billion a year on equalization and does not prescribe any specific formula and does not define what, quote, reasonably comparable means. A People's Party government will reduce the total amount of equalization payments to provinces and make sure that only the provinces with the greatest needs benefit from it. Establish a parliamentary committee to review and make recommendations on a new formula that will avoid the welfare trap and provide poorer provinces with the right incentives to adopt pro-growth economic policies and reduce their dependence on federal money. And ensure that the new formula respects our Constitution, makes provincial governments more responsible for their policy decisions, and is fair for citizens of all provinces. Okay, so I'll be honest, I had to do some reading about the equalization stuff. I didn't know very much about it. I found this little explainer video, and we're going to watch about a minute of it. It's from Saskatchewan, but I'm going to give you the Ontario numbers after we're done watching this, okay? Here we go.
This year, the federal government will pay nearly $20 billion to provinces through a program called Equalization. 5 provinces, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, Newfoundland, and Ontario, all get 0, while 1 province, Quebec, gets over $13 billion, or about 66% of the total. That's because equalization is calculated based on a complicated formula that is supposed to reflect the relative strength of different provincial economies. So the have provinces get nothing, while the have-not provinces get billions of dollars. Not very equal, is it? The problem is the formula is flawed and doesn't really reflect what is going on in different provincial economies. So even while the economies of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Newfoundland were being hit by a downturn in the resource sector, they continued to get nothing, and we were subsidizing other provinces whose economies were actually doing better. That's not fair. Equalization is a federal program funded by the taxes you pay through federal income tax and GST. That means every man, woman, and child in Saskatchewan contributes on average a little over $500 in federal taxes towards equalization every year, money that is then handed out to other provinces. In total, Saskatchewan taxpayers pay about $600 million a year towards equalization to subsidize programs and services in other provinces. To put that into perspective, $600 million is more than enough to balance the provincial budget in Saskatchewan. This has to change.
Okay, and with the end of the video, they suggest their solution, and it's a pretty elegant one, and in absence of any other starting point, I think it's a good starting point. But I'll show you the Ontario numbers. This is from news article posted in December of 2018. We're going to look at this one again later in the video, but I just wanted to show you how much it costs Ontario in the same vein as we just looked at Saskatchewan. So this is from the article. It says, quote, "The government was well aware it would not be qualifying this year for equalization payments, but Ontario Finance Minister Vic Fedeli says it's further proof of why equalization program needs an overhaul. He said Ontario will contribute $8 billion into equalization and won't get anything from it. Overall, Ontario will give Ottawa $12.9 billion more in taxes than it will receive from federal spending." Okay, and $8 billion directly to the equalization formula and the equalization program translates to about $558 per person, which is the same, which is very close to the $600 that Saskatchewan was talking about. I just wanted to compare apples to apples just so we're all clear on how much money we're talking about, right? Cumulatively, you pay that by GST, so things you purchase in the store or online or whatever, goods, or HST, I suppose now, and you pay it directly through income taxes, right? Directly, and then that money is used in an unfair formula. And I looked, I couldn't find an example of the formula. It's really difficult to find. The formula has been renewed quietly by the Liberals last year I believe in the omnibus budget bill. And so the formula that got carried on was the same one the Harper Conservatives instituted at the end of 2014, early 2015. And here's a National Post article talking about those changes and what they mean for Ontario. National Post is reporting, quote, "Conservatives' equalization payment formula good for Alberta and Quebec, bad for Ontario," report. Changes to the way federal transfers to provinces are calculated since the Harper government took power appear to have made Ontario a big loser under equalization programs and Alberta the big winner, according to Canada's budget watchdog. I scroll down. While the provinces gain under some transfers, it will lose $1.2 billion under the equalization program designed to give so-called have-not provinces the fiscal response capacity to provide residents services roughly comparable to those in other provinces. Until this year, Ontario would have received about $640 million from Ottawa under a program that protects provinces from seeing transfers drop in any one year. But that option was scrapped by then Finance Minister Jim Flaherty. So remember, this is going back almost a decade for that change. I scroll down a little bit. Speaking in Toronto, Finance Minister Joe Oliver, said Canada has a, quote, "fair and balanced and generous equalization system, that changes were needed to cap the growth because it was becoming, quote, unaffordable." Interesting. And I want to point out here that they chopped up this quote to make it say exactly what they wanted. They quoted the finance minister until fair, balanced, and generous, and then dropped that and said equalization system. The changes were needed to cap the growth because it was becoming, and then went back to the quotes, unaffordable. So that's suspect at the very least. I don't know what the finance minister said, but surely it included fair, balanced, and generous, and unaffordable. So that's all I can tell you. Anyway, scroll down. An official with his office said total transfer payments to Ontario had risen by more than $8 billion since the Harper Conservatives took office in 2006. But Ontario Finance Minister Charles Sousa said the PBO report confirms what he has been saying all along. The current system of federal-provincial fiscal arrangements is working against, not for, the people of Ontario. Quote, "Each year, the share of federal revenue raised in Ontario is higher than the share of federal spending in Ontario," he added. "This money could be used in Ontario to fund more hospitals, nurses, or public transit." The Liberal government of Ontario has been one of the staunchest critics of the changes, but the federal government responded that it was only applying the formula fairly. I scroll down a little bit. The bottom line is that equalization programs have moved away from being an equalization program to being another transfer program because the way it's designed now, it does not equalize to any national standard, says Mr. Ascari. Sorry if I've got that incorrect. Okay, and the next one is at the beginning of 2018, or mid-2018, after the budget bill was put out and went to people were able to read it, this was part of the news. So the first part of this segment, the first minute and a half, was talking about, with this gentleman, talking about the renewal of the transfer payments and how upset the provinces were about that. Here is the host again talking about fairness. We're going to watch a couple of clips here. Hold on, here we go.
And objections to the status quo, Nick, pretty much come down to one word, don't they? Fairness.
That's right. Because of the way equalization works, you either get it or you don't. There's no in between. And because of the way it's calculated, because of the way non-renewable resources revenues are factored in, provinces like Saskatchewan and Alberta, even when oil prices went down, for example, remained have provinces. And the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, is saying that doesn't work. We should change that. And he's pushed forward a different kind of approach.
Okay, and Mr. or Premier Moe goes through his approach. And again, I'm not going to outline it here because that's not the point. The People's Party is saying that we would look at this. And again, I think the approach has merit for sure. But again, we haven't looked at it yet, right? So I don't want to go into that yet. Here he outlines how politically difficult it will be in order to change this because Quebec gets a lot in transfer payments and it is politically fraught to bring it up. Here we go.
Now, the difficulty is that you can't separate the politics from all of this. We saw it earlier. Quebec gets a lot of money out of this. So if you change the way the pie is divided, you would take money away from Quebec. And politically, that is a difficult thing to do. And I should mention, too, that despite what some provinces are saying that they're not happy, there is no sign right now that Ottawa would be even willing to entertain the idea of changing the equalization program.
So the current Liberals aren't interested in looking at changing the equalization program formula. As they signaled, nothing's going to change until 2024. That's already done and happened. This is old news, essentially. I'm just bringing you up to speed on what's happened. Here's a chart to show you, and I think this chart is weird as well, but it starts 2015 and 16 over here, and it moves towards current time now through the left. I don't know. So the closest one is current. But if you look at 2015-16, Quebec was receiving $9 billion in transfer payments, and now they're receiving $13 billion. And if you look at 2015-16, Ontario was receiving $2.3 billion in transfer payments, and in 2019, Ontario was receiving none. And as Saskatchewan was saying in their explainer video that is linked if you want to check it out in the description, all they want is fairness. It doesn't necessarily have to stop, but it has to be calculated fairly. And so how does this chart, I thought we needed a visual representation of how this actually breaks down. So the blue is 2019, red is 2018, yellow is 2017, green is 2016, orange is 2015. Ontario doesn't get any blue, right? And this is how the payments stack up. So why does Quebec get so much? Why does Quebec get so much? This is an article from 2012, and I just want to show you. It's reported in the National Post. And here is the explanation for why Quebec gets so much. National Post reporting, quote, "A quirk in the equalization formula excludes the true value of hydroelectricity energy produced by Manitoba and Quebec, which sell their hydropower in local markets for below market prices without penalty. An analogy would be a Saskatchewan selling its oil with a market value of about $95 a barrel in its local market for $50. The formula is correct to deduct the market price of oil of $95 rather than the artificially low price, $50, from any equalization payments. The same logic should apply to Quebec and Manitoba's hydro revenues under the equalization rules, but doesn't. By creating a massive financial incentive for Quebec and Manitoba to subsidize hydropower heavily, the current arrangements generate market inefficiencies and encourage resource waste. Between 2005 and 2010, Quebec received $42.4 billion in equalization. Lost revenues resulting from excessively low electricity pricing during that. Sorry about the phone call there. I'm going to keep going. Lost revenues resulting from excessively low electricity pricing during that period was $28.6 billion. Calculations are available at fcpp.org. Since the equalization formula deducts 50% as a clawback from additional resource proceeds, an extra $14.3 billion, half of the $28.6 billion, should have been deducted from Quebec's equalization if its hydro revenues were treated the same as Alberta's oil revenues under the rules. That would yield a total equalization payment of $28.1 billion instead of $42.4 billion for the period, for the 2005 to 2010 period. Now, that's a hard thing to calculate in current numbers. I'm just trying to show you that it would drop Quebec's equalization formula if it was calculated in a fair manner. So that's interesting to note. Here's the article I mentioned earlier. This is December 2018, and this is the up-to-date one. This is talking about Ontario having zero equalization payments now. And, well, here we go. We'll have a quick look at it. National Post reporting, quote, "For the first time in a decade, Ontario denied an equalization payment after losing have-not status. For the first time in a decade, Ontario will not receive an equalization transfer from Ottawa, prompting the province's finance minister to join calls for the federal government to review how the program is set up. Canada's finance ministers are in Ottawa for the second of their 2 yearly meetings, which started with a working dinner at an Ottawa hotel Sunday night. Just ahead of that dinner, federal finance minister Bill Morneau released publicly the amount of money Ottawa will transfer to the provinces and territories in 2019-20, including the nearly $20 billion in equalization. It's up almost $880 million from the current year. That's 2018, by the way. But the amount will be split among just 5 provinces: Quebec, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. For the first time since 2008, recession put Ontario on the have-not province list. Ontario is not among them. Quebec, on the other hand, is getting more than $13 billion from the program, an increase of nearly $1.4 billion. Technically, Ontario's economic growth was good enough in 2016-17 to push it out of the have-not status when a province's finances are considered lower than average and qualify them for equalization. However, because of the way the program works, Ontario still received $963 million in 2018-19. The government was well aware that it would not be qualifying this year for equalization, but Ontario Finance Minister Vic Fedeli said it's further proof of why the equalization program needs an overhaul. He said Ontario will contribute $8 billion into equalization and won't get anything from it. Overall, Ontario will give Ottawa $12.9 billion more in taxes than it will receive from federal spending, he said. So we're certainly calling on the feds for a review of their federal transfer payments because we want to make sure that Ontario businesses and families are getting our fair share, said Fedeli. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland have also called for changes to the formula. Morneau said the formula was renewed earlier this year, 2018, for a 5-year period after extensive discussions from his department, but he knows the formula will be raised at the table. No debate in the House of Commons, note. This bill was tabled in an omnibus bill, so there's no debate in the House of Commons. When you package a bill in an omnibus bill, it doesn't get debated. Each line in the bill doesn't get debated. The overall merits of the bill get debated, right? So this was just pushed through quietly, and people were upset. All these provinces want, is a fair change to the formula, right? They want changes to the formula and they want it to be fair. Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland, and Labrador want changes to make it fair. Mr. Trudeau has signaled, and by his actions in control of the government, has shown us that he is not going to change the equalization formula. Mr. Scheer will also not change the equalization formula. The Conservative Party of Canada will not change the equalization formula. Here's the Saskatchewan Herald reporting, quote, "Scheer's Tories stand with Quebec, not Saskatchewan, on equalization. As the fight over federal equalization payments to Quebec and the Maritime heats up, one political leader has been completely silent on the issue. Conservative Party leader and Regina MP Andrew Scheer, and his silence speaks volumes as the Conservatives Party stand with Quebec City, not Regina, on the issue." And sorry, yes, I did not try to pronounce that because I would have failed miserably. I apologize. Back to the article. "Each year, a constitutionally established equalization program sees billions in transfer from resource-rich provinces go to poor, have-not provinces. BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan received no equalization. Ontario received a small amount in 2018. And Quebec and the Maritimes provinces receive billions annually in transfer payments." Okay, so that's where we're at, folks. The People's Party is promising to look at this and change it and make it fair for everyone while respecting the Constitution, etc., and incentivizing provinces to develop their own wealth. It makes sense. A richer province in every province in Canada makes a richer Canada, right? And the right incentives will hopefully encourage the provinces to make the right economic choices and develop their national resources. Because, I mean, that's the economic engine of our country. Alberta has been that for quite a long time. Why not encourage the rest of the country to catch up? Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca and check out ppcguelph.ca. That's the local EDA's website. We'd love to have you check out what we're putting out there. We hope you find it worthwhile. Thanks for watching, everybody. My name is Mark Peralivas. That rhymes with for all of us. Have a wonderful day.